Hello, my name is Koury. I'm professor of architecture and urbanism at Mackenzie Presbyterian University in São Paulo, Brazil. My research focused on social housing, urban peripheries, and the impact of climate change on cities. I'm leading urban real-world laboratories in the eastern zone of São Paulo, where we work closely with local communities and public institutions to co-develop sustainable solutions. I'm also part of the Brazilian research network INCT Climapolis, and I was a visiting scholar with the research group Urban Future Making in Hafen City University, Hamburg.
Hi, my name is Paulo Rosa. I am an illustrator and design graduate from São Judas University. Over the past 2 years, I have collaborated with Professor Paulo Koury and Arthur in the real-world labs, contributing through graphic design, illustration, and visual storytelling to make research findings more accessible and engaging to all involved.
Hello, my name is Arthur Alves, and I'm also a design graduate from São Judas University. And together with Kawan, we formed this communication and design team dedicated to develop visual and participatory communication strategies that connect and strengthen the relations between community, academy, and public institutions. Now, I will continue by presenting the outcomes of our collaboration and the research that emerged from the joint efforts of our team. Favelas, when seen from within, test a promise of civilization. They are the antithesis of the modern project of a city regulated according to the cycles of nature and civilization. The exploitative consumption of resources produces residual spaces where the human, material, and environmental remnants of industrialization are deposited. Social exclusion, informality, and environmental conditions present in favelas are symptoms of the limitations of governance and planning, and they compromise climate resilience in socially and environmentally fragile areas. Brazilian urban policy represents an important milestone in democratic expansion, as stated in the 1988 Constitution, in a country where 84% of the population currently lives in urban areas. Without disregarding the contradictions that exist between ideology and the praxis of Brazil's democratic political process, this research, through both its prior results and its current development, seeks to contribute to expanding Brazilian urban democracy and environmental climate justice. It navigates the production and management practices of peripheral settlements in the city of São Paulo, examining the contradictions between formal regulation and the informal production of the city, as well as the challenges faced by public authorities in managing these contradictions between the formal model of urban planning and the reality and demands of governance as they manifest in these territories. The inadequacy of favelas and precarious settlements with respect to urban regulations has already been the subject of innovation in the democratic city management instruments established by the city statute. However, innovations in the regulatory framework are not sufficient to guarantee the rights of the city. Favelas, seen from within, offer a living laboratory of the limitations of democratic city management tools. The initial questions we pose are: how are the instruments of democratic city management applied in practice within urban interventions in these territories? How could they be improved in light of a real intervention situation? By answering these two initial questions, we can unfold a third and more important one that guides the research. Can favelas become territories of institutional innovation, capable of revealing alternative pathways for governance and urban planning to enhance climate resilience in socially and environmentally fragile areas? Governance is understood here as the articulation between public entities and civil society, institutionalized through the instruments of democratic city management provided in the Participatory Master Plan of São Paulo, as well as the set of effective articulations that make transformations in these territories possible. Therefore, we consider both institutionalized governance and the local culture of governance, which is often practiced through the informal personal relationships necessary for managing these informal territories. Governance, therefore, represents the path toward a social pact that enables the city's planning system, through which São Paulo seeks to ensure balanced and resilient urban development, expressed in instruments such as the Strategic Master Plan, the Municipal Climate Action Plan, the Urban Drainage Plan, and the Municipal Forestation Plan, among others. The research seeks to understand the concrete governance problems faced by public authorities in managing the city's informal areas, which constitute both a reality and a challenge for public management. The study focuses on two peripheral localities in São Paulo, with a high concentration of favelas, Itaim Paulista and Ermelino Matarazzo. These are two peripheral subprefectures located in the city's eastern zone, on the banks of the Tietê River, the largest river crossing São Paulo. The main problem in these areas are flooding and inundations caused by their proximity to the river. Urban drainage issues are the most critical, but they bring with them many others that arise in the numerous interactions within these territories, such as river pollution, solid waste accumulation, and precarious electrical installations, among others. The adopted methodology seeks to facilitate communication among stakeholders in order to build a shared understanding of the problems faced by these peripheral areas and to develop a jointly agreed response between public authorities across various administrative levels, technical experts, academia, and the local community. This approach identifies governance gaps and enables an understanding of the role of formal instruments and local culture in improving the process. Labs as platforms for interaction among researchers, managers, and local agents. The theory. Real-world laboratories, or RWLs, emerge as transdisciplinary experimental spaces aimed at the transition towards sustainability, integrating civil society, universities, and public authorities in the co-production of urban solutions. They differ from traditional models by uniting science and social practice to generate applicable knowledge for complex problems. In Europe, especially in Germany, RWLs have been incorporated into urban and climate governance policies of the European Union, with growing acceptance in public funding and research calls. Comparative studies have analyzed different types of laboratories: real-world, urban transition, sustainable living, and transformation labs, to refine experimentation and evaluation methods, focusing on social learning and reproducibility. A notable example is the Wuppertal Transformation for Well-being, or WTW project, developed by the University and Institute of Wuppertal. The project coordinates 3 RWLs, including one in the district of Mark, which faces poverty and unemployment. The initiative involves the organization Utopa Started, which revitalized an old railway station as a hub for active mobility, culture, urban gardening, and co-working, highlighting the role of social cultural institutions in local transformation. International literature has consolidated the methodological foundations of RWLs, including typologies, phases, and principles, oriented toward reducing greenhouse gas emissions and enhancing climate adaptation. RWLs operate within specific urban contexts and share common principles. Transformation, promoting sustainable transitions through collaborative local actions. Experimentation, producing scientific evidence in real-world contexts. Transdisciplinarity, bringing together scientists and practitioners for co-design and co-evaluation. Scalability, seeking to apply lessons learned to other contexts. Reflexive learning, encouraging social and cultural reflection. These experiences require continuous collaboration, long-term engagement, and knowledge transfer. Among their challenges are balancing science and practice, limited political impact, and the tension between local validity and university applicability. In Latin America, analogous experiences are more closely related to social urbanism and participatory processes. In Brazil, such practices gained strength with the city statute, but the institutionalization of urban planning reduced the vitality of social participation. Programs such as ATHIS law and social urbanism have emerged to fill this gap. Although they share the purpose of local transformation and collaboration among actors, RWLs stand out for their continuous reformulation of scientific questions and systematic integration between theory and practice, becoming, as Leite defines, a theory without a model. In Brazil, this perspective is reflected in studies on climate governance led by Pedro Roberto Jacobi, who analyzes the São Paulo macro-metropolis and Mexico City as complex systems. His goal is to integrate environmental governance, climate variability, and social vulnerability into a public transformation agenda. Resulting from an academic study coordinated by Professor Dr. Ana Paula Koury and Professor Dr. Fernando Luiz Lara, involving scientists from several institutions, the work Planning and Participation, a new agenda for urban and environmental policies in Brazil, led to the creation of Lab Itaim Paulista, a real-world lab focused on the Ribeirão do Lajeado watershed, located in the eastern zone of São Paulo. This area was chosen as a pilot project for a local climate action plan. The plan integrates territorial governance strategies inspired by the sub-prefecture model, with hydrological modeling of the watershed, addressing the challenges of water security in a vulnerable urban territory. The research analyzed the challenges of implementing a more balanced urban hydrological cycle based on direct observations of local technical political processes. The main results indicate 1. The public sector's difficulty in overcoming a culture of fragmented projects disconnected from integrated environmental plans. 2. The identification of social groups with potential to form community governance networks. And 3. The relevance of simulating alternative scenarios through hydrological modeling and nature-based solutions as a means to strengthen urban resilience. Subsequently, a similar laboratory was implemented in another region in the neighborhood of Ermelino Matarazzo, also coordinated by Professor Dr. Ana Paula Koury. This project investigates issues similar to those observed in Laboratories Paulista, including riverbank occupations, water pollution, drainage problems, and other environmental vulnerabilities. A crucial point, already identified in the previous laboratory, is the difficulty faced by civil society in assimilating and understanding technical or academic materials related to the region, as well as their implications for urban management. Therefore, throughout the project's development, communication and mediation strategies that make technical knowledge accessible and relevant, promoting greater community participation and strengthening the integration between civil society, academia, and government have become an increasingly frequent demand. This demand became even more evident during a public hearing involving Labermelino, in which one of the main complaints from residents was the difficulty in understanding technical materials and proposed solutions. Often, the content provided is excessively technical or insufficiently explanatory, generating more doubts than answers among residents interested in understanding the actions planned to improve their neighborhood. One of the languages explored by the laboratory to enhance communication among these parties was illustration. The first experiments began at Laboratories Paulista, with simple and accessible illustrations designed to strengthen the atmosphere of trust between academia and civil society, which were made available on the project's website. This approach was also reflected in theoretical applications, such as in the project's first booklet, which illustrates basic concepts about informal settlements, a phenomenon frequently observed in Itaim Paulista. The illustrations, developed sensitively and integrated into the daily life of residents, help materialize and give form to the experiences they live every day. At the same time, they stimulate critical reflection on the territory and translate technical concepts in an accessible and playful way, bringing knowledge closer to local reality rather than presenting it as isolated information and data. The use of illustration proved to be a powerful tool in lab activities, as demonstrated by the event Praça da Mãe Preta, The Book of Dreams, which exemplified its potential as an instrument of communication, engagement, and collective expression. Held in Itaim Paulista, the event was a pedagogical strategy developed by Laboratories Paulista member Fabio Groy as part of his master program at São Judas University, titled Pedagogical Illustration Strategy for City Planning and Management, IPG Strategy. The meeting brought together local parents and their children, who went out to observe their community, collecting data, identifying problems, and noting environmental aspects that later became topics of discussion. They were then invited to record and express their experiences through images such as drawings, collages, and paintings. Through drawing, participants expressed emotions and subjective perceptions that fostered structured and critical thinking about the region in which they live. The act of creation, combined with the engagement generated during the drawing process, resulted in productions that later served as the basis for collective debates among participants, during which suggestions were presented in relation to the images produced. The making of the drawings guided the agendas of subsequent discussions, demonstrating that drawings, and by extension, other forms of visual expression, constitutes not merely an aesthetic or artistic manifestation, but above all, an essential communicative and interactive tool for dialogue between community and project. Building upon experience gained in previous Labitan initiatives, this approach has proven effective in most recent phase of Labermelina. The project seeks to understand the different compartments of the watershed, the constructive typologies, and the various drainage-related issues. In parallel, a communication routine has been established among members of Labermelino, CIURB, FCTH, the Subprefecture of Ermelino Matarazzo, and Civil Defense, allowing for the alignment of demands and planning guidelines aimed at resolving identified problems. This partnership remains ongoing and already includes the development of communication materials that convey data and information clearly and accessibly to local residents. Regarding project communication, special care has been taken to define a strategy capable of producing clear and accessible materials without compromising technical accuracy or omitting relevant information. To achieve this, the most recent tests have focused on the detailed analysis of the content to be adapted. In this initial stage, constant contact with technicians is essential to clarify doubts and ensure precision. Then, during the adaptation phase, points of improvement are identified and elements that cannot be modified are highlighted. This stage requires continuous feedback from those responsible for the original project. Finally, the use of narrative and visual elements, though not indispensable in every material, significantly enriches the final product. The use of storytelling has proven to be an effective method for gradually introducing technical and complex information in a more fluid and engaging way. One of the most promising products currently under development is the adaptation of a series of figures, images, and maps to be presented at the next public hearing. This material is being carefully reformulated to preserve technical content while making it clear and dynamic, allowing any resident or participant to understand the information without requiring prior specialized knowledge. This strategy includes an introduction to local issues presented through illustrations that represent scenarios from a local perspective, as well as the incorporation of animations, particularly useful for demonstrating processes such as water flow, a phenomenon that, in static images, would require much greater contextual effort to be fully understood. At the end of this trajectory, which began with the problem of governance in fragile areas and adopted the labs as an interaction framework, we arrive at a central point. The greatest barrier to climate resilience is not merely technical, but fundamentally communicational. The material produced, such as booklets, videos, participatory maps, and illustrations, are not merely final products of the research, but essential instruments that enable local governance itself, functioning as a common language and as a bridge for the flow of knowledge across three essential pathways. These visual materials play a crucial role in mediating between different spheres of knowledge, allowing academics and technical experts to translate complex data, such as hydrology or urban zoning, into accessible and comprehensible information. This strengthens the capacity of local communities to validate such data through their empirical knowledge, to express their demands in a structured way, and to provide public managers with a strategic communication tool that facilitates the clear presentation of intervention proposals and, most importantly, promotes qualified and participatory feedback from the population involved. We still have much to explore and look forward to the upcoming results in the development of this project. This research represents not only our voices, but also those of all who have contributed to the project, including researchers, students, residents, and everyone who welcomed and took part in our investigation. Thank you.